Hi, Mystery Recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a sci-fi thriller movie called The Stepford Wives. Spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. The movie begins by introducing us to a married couple, Walter and Joanna. The husband is a successful lawyer, while the wife aspires to be a photographer. They used to live in Manhattan, but are now relocating to the small suburban town of Stepford with their 2 daughters. Walter is very excited because he has landed a good job opportunity there. However, Joanna appears to be unhappy with the change, as she had hoped to pursue a career as a photographer in the city. In the next scene, the family arrives at their new house, which is huge. While the movers bring in the rest of the stuff, Walter goes outside to feed his dog. During this, he is approached by a woman named Carol, who turns out to be their neighbor. She welcomes him to the town and hands him a casserole, but she has no expression on her face and speaks very strangely. Walter invites Carol inside to meet his wife, but she refuses and departs. The ironic thing is it's actually people in cities that act like this. The next day, Walter leaves for work and the kids are at school. Joanna explores the area and notices Carol outside pruning the trees. She decides to approach her and thank her for the casserole, but moments later, she notices Carol's husband, Ted, approaching her from behind and basically groping her. He then inspects her by opening the top of her shirt and looking down. "Nice pumpkins there, babe." This makes Joanna very uncomfortable, and she quietly leaves from there. In the evening, Walter and Joanna talk about their day while cleaning up the kitchen. She tells him what she saw in the afternoon and how strange it was that the man openly approached his wife and just grabbed her boobs. However, Walter doesn't think it's a big deal since it's her husband. Following this, he informs her that he wishes to join a town's association that is exclusively for men. He mentions that this group includes all of the town's important men, such as cops, doctors, lawyers, and businessmen. Joanna gets very angry upon hearing this and accuses him of being selfish and making decisions on his own. She reminds him of how he decided to move here and began looking for houses even before telling her. Joanna knows that he is talking about this men's association because he is already a member. Walter tries to persuade her that it's not true, but she becomes upset and retreats to her room. The next day, Joanna is approached by a woman named Bobbie, who has also recently moved to the town. She has a very outgoing and vibrant personality. She and Bobbie quickly bond, and the latter reveals that her husband is also a member of the men's association. They then talk about how boring the town and its residents are. They also find it odd that every house in this town is spotless, but there are no maids. Except for the 2 of them, all the other wives seem to lack any hobbies and are just focused on housework. In the evening, Walter invites some members from the men's club and shows them around the house. Meanwhile, Joanna is working in the kitchen when a man named Diz approaches her. He mentions that he enjoys watching women perform domestic chores. If this were the 2020s, you'd be dusting off my PS5. They then introduce themselves, and Joanna wonders why he is called Diz. He claims it is because he used to work at Disneyland, but she doesn't buy it, because that's dumb as hell. Following this, the men gather in the living room to begin planning events for their association. They let Joanna sit in, but when she offers some ideas, they mostly ignore her. Throughout the meeting, an old man continues to observe her and sketch her. When he shows Joanna the finished sketch, she is impressed by his talent. She even gets more excited when she learns that the man is a famous artist whose work she has long admired. After everyone leaves, Walter remarks that the committee members are pretty great. However, Joanna believes that aside from the artist, the rest of them are boring. She found Diz particularly annoying because of his strange habits. Walter responds by saying that Diz has a PhD in business and runs a multi-million-dollar corp, but Joanna is still unimpressed and states that she would never spend a single moment in a room with these idiots in New York. Days later, Diz throws a massive party for everyone in town. Joanna feels completely out of place, so she sticks with Bobbie. Just then, Carol begins to exhibit strange behavior. At first, she insists on getting Joanna and Bobbie a drink because they don't have one, but then she just walks off. Later, while she is eating, she approaches several people, saying that she will die if she doesn't get the recipe. When Ted notices this, he becomes worried and approaches his wife. He chastises her for drinking too much. "It's not like they're forcing these on you, honey," and takes her away from the party. The following day, Carol approaches Joanna and Bobbie to apologize for what happened at the party. She explains that because they are new, she doesn't want to give a negative impression of the town. She also admits that the only reason she and Ted moved to Stepford was because she had a drinking problem. Hearing this, the 2 women are confused, as it wasn't necessary to apologize. They begin to suspect that the men must have prompted Carol to come over to apologize. Later, Joanna and Bobbie talk about how the women in town are overly timid and domestic. They decide to form their own women's association to help them become more confident and outgoing. Over the next few days, they meet with various women in town and try to persuade them to join their club. However, everyone rejects the invitation, saying they need to look after their kids and take care of their homes. After wandering all over town, they finally meet a woman named Charmaine, who is outgoing, like them. It turns out she only moved here a few months ago. Charmaine reveals that she used to play tennis with other women when she first arrived here, but they eventually stopped coming, and she is not sure why. Charmaine then expresses interest in attending meetings with Bobbie and Joanna, if they form a club. One evening, something weird happens. When one of the guys from the men's committee arrives to visit Joanna, he reveals that he stammers and is therefore overly interested in language and vocals. He asks her to make a list of every place she has ever lived and record herself reading every word from the dictionary. Joanna is perplexed by the weird request, but she agrees to help him. In exchange, she asks him to persuade the wives of the town to join their club. The man is reluctant at first, but eventually agrees.
All right, but first, can you say aardvark for me?
The scene then cuts to the first meeting of the women's club. Charmaine admits that she believes her husband never truly loved her and only married her because he desired a trophy wife. Joanna then encourages the others to open up as well, but they have nothing meaningful to say. Instead, they begin talking about cleaning products and how to make their housework easier. Joanna and Bobbie realize how tedious these women are and feel frustrated. Later that night, Joanna leaves the house to walk her dog. While she is gone, the members of the men's club come over to inspect the bedroom. Joanna soon comes across a huge mansion a bit farther from her house. She is then approached by a cop who reveals that this mansion is the headquarters of the Men's Association. He advises her not to come here at this time, saying it's not safe. Joanna apologizes to the cop and quietly leaves. Days later, she and Bobbie arrive at Charmaine's house to play tennis, but they are surprised to see her tennis court being demolished. They then approach Charmaine, who reveals that she just returned from a weekend trip with her husband. She says things are fine between them now, and she is happy. Charmaine then explains that she demolished the tennis court and fired her maid to please her husband. The two women are stunned to see her acting so submissive all of a sudden. Following this, Joanna and Bobbie begin investigating the reason for these women's submissive and bland behavior. After questioning some people in the town, they learn that all of these women were once assertive, independent, and staunch supporters of liberal social policy. They are even more shocked to learn that there was once a women's association in the town, led by none other than Carol. Having had enough, Bobbie announces that she's going to leave Stepford and asks Joanna to come with her. She is determined not to end up like the other wives. Joanna also agrees, and the two women decide to discuss their plans with their husbands. That night, Joanna tells Walter that she is unhappy in this town and wants to leave. Surprisingly, he agrees, but says they can't move until next month due to work. He asks Joanna to find a new place to live while he completes his work. This overjoys Joanna, and she kisses her husband in excitement. Days later, Bobbie goes on a weekend trip with her husband, but when she returns, she is a completely different person than before. When Joanna arrives to meet her, she is dressed in a pretty dress with full makeup and is busy with household chores. A shocked Joanna asks what happened to her, but Bobbie assures her that everything is fine. She says it's no big deal to take care of the house, since her husband works very hard. She also admits that she was just overreacting before and no longer wants to leave Stepford. Seeing this, Joanna is terrified and rushes back to her house. She tries to tell Walter what she saw, but he accuses her of acting crazy. He even tells Joanna to focus on being the perfect housewife and cleaning the house instead of worrying about other people. They soon get into a heated argument, and Joanna threatens to leave. This finally scares Walter, and he begins to speak to her gently. He then starts gaslighting her, saying she is not mentally stable and recommends that she see a therapist. He also promises that they will be leaving Stepford soon, which gives her some relief. The scene then shifts to Joanna in a therapy session complaining about this town. The psychiatrist states that it is understandable that she's struggling after leaving the city. However, Joanna opens up about how she's noticed that the women in town change after they arrive. She believes that the men are doing something to change them. Joanna also reveals that her two closest friends both changed around the 4-month mark and expresses her fear that she might be next. Hearing this, the psychiatrist finally takes her seriously, but explains that she needs to leave town for a few days. Joanna responds that she won't be around when she returns. She says it will be someone who looks and speaks like her, but it won't be her. Joanna will no longer be a woman with a passion for photography, but rather like one of those robots at Disneyland. The worried psychiatrist then advises her to leave home for a few days, and when she returns, they will meet again. Upon reaching home, Joanna tries to find her kids to take them with her. However, Walter informs her that they're not at home, but at a friend's house. He then attempts to seduce her, but when she refuses, they get into a physical fight. Joanna eventually locks herself in a room to get away from her husband. Meanwhile, Walter goes downstairs and calls someone to inform them about their fight. While he is distracted, Joanna sneaks out and heads to Bobbie's house, hoping her children will be there. Upon her arrival, Bobbie claims that her kids aren't there and offers her coffee. Joanna demands to know why she has suddenly changed, but Bobbie continues to deny it. Frustrated, Joanna takes a knife and makes a small cut on her finger, which bleeds. She then stabs Bobbie in the stomach, but nothing happens to her. Instead, she starts glitching and repeating the same phrase over and over. Andrew Tate is right. Andrew Tate is right. Upon seeing this, it finally dawns on Joanna that the woman in front of her is not her friend, but merely a robot. She then returns to her house and attacks Walter with a fire poker, demanding to know where their children are. He finally reveals that the children are at the Men's Association office before passing out. Despite sensing that she might become their next victim, Joanna heads to the mansion hoping to find her children. As she navigates through the spooky and empty mansion, she hears one of her daughters calling out to her. She follows the sound and enters a room, only to discover that it's a tape recorder. Diz then welcomes her and reveals that the children are actually with Charmaine. He explains how the men in Stepford have been replacing their wives with their ideal versions. When Joanna demands to know why, he responds, "Because we can." Hearing this, she becomes scared and runs away while screaming. Joanna eventually comes across a room where she shockingly discovers a partially completed robot who looks exactly like her. She is horrified by its black, empty eyes that stare back at her. At this moment, Diz arrives and observes the scene with amusement. The robot then smiles at Joanna and calmly approaches her with a stocking, presumably to strangle her. In the final scene, we see the robotic Joanna leisurely walking through the local supermarket, surrounded by the other glamorously dressed wives. As the women pass each other, they exchange greetings with no emotion in their voices. The movie concludes with a smiling Walter picking up his robotic wife in his car, with their children in the back seat. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.